Hello everyone and welcome back to Crash CSS. I am Wasim Khan, your instructor for the Complete Criminology series. In this second lecture, we dive deeper into the scientific foundations of criminology, what it means, how it developed, and why it plays a critical role in understanding crime from multiple perspectives. This scene sets the base for the interconnected nature of criminal behavior, society, law, and security. Criminology, as defined in scholarly literature and by Britannica, is the scientific study of crime, criminals, and the justice system. But its scope goes beyond legal definitions. Edwin Sutherland, the father of modern criminology, famously described it as the body of knowledge regarding crime as a social phenomenon. This means criminology is not merely about what the law prohibits. It studies why individuals commit crimes, how societies react to crime, and how crime patterns change across time and cultures. From the legal perspective, criminology acknowledges crime as an act defined and punished by the state. But from the sociological perspective, crime is seen as a product of social structures, cultural norms, inequality, and institutional failure. Sociologists like Durkheim argued that crime is a normal part of society because it highlights areas where social change is needed. From the psychological perspective, criminology studies personality factors, motives, impulses, mental disorders, aggression, and emotional dysfunctions that contribute to criminal behavior. Criminology is therefore interdisciplinary, blending sociology, psychology, law, anthropology, economics, and political science. For CSS aspirants, mastering these perspectives is essential because examiners expect analytical, multidimensional answers rooted in theory and supported with real-world examples. In Pakistan's context, where terrorism, street crime, corruption, cybercrime, and extremism challenge the state, criminology helps us understand causes before proposing solutions. This lecture begins by clarifying these foundational perspectives to help you build conceptual strength for the rest of the course. The scope of criminology is vast because crime touches every part of society. It examines the full cycle of crime and justice, from the creation of laws to law-breaking behavior and society's response. This scene explains how criminology spans theory, research, institutions, and policy, forming one of the most interdisciplinary fields in social sciences. At its core, criminology studies lawmaking, which includes understanding how societies define criminal acts. Criminologists ask why certain behaviors, such as drug use or financial fraud, become illegal in one time or place while remaining legal in another. The second dimension is lawbreaking, where criminologists search for the causes of crime. These causes include poverty, inequality, broken families, social disorganization, psychological disorders, lack of opportunity, peer influence, and institutional failure. The third dimension is societal reaction, which includes policing, courts, prisons, probation systems, and rehabilitation programs. The scope further includes specialized subfields, criminal typologies, violent crime, property crime, white-collar crime, cybercrime, organized crime, victimology, the study of victims and victimization, penology, punishment, prisons, and rehabilitation, criminal psychology, forensic sciences, juvenile justice, and comparative criminology across countries. Scholars like Lombroso, Sutherland, Merton, Becker, Hershey, and Shaw and McKay provide theories that shape these areas. Criminology also contributes to policy development, especially in countries like Pakistan, where crime is linked with unemployment, extremism, rapid urbanization, weak governance, corruption, and policing challenges. It examines why Karachi faces gang violence, why white-collar crime flourishes in institutional loopholes, why terrorism persists due to political instability, and how cybercrime expands in digital environments. For CSS aspirants, understanding criminology's scope is indispensable. It helps you connect legal, social, psychological, and institutional factors and present answers that are analytical, rather than descriptive. Criminology is not just academic, it is a practical toolkit for crime control and governance. Criminology and criminal law are closely related, but fundamentally different fields. Understanding their distinction is vital for CSS answers because examiners expect clarity and precision. Criminal law belongs to jurisprudence. Criminology belongs to social sciences. Criminal law defines crimes, sets punishments, and governs procedures of arrest, prosecution, and sentencing. It is normative, prescribing what society considers illegal. In contrast, criminology is descriptive and analytical, explaining why crime happens, who commits it, and how society responds. Britannica emphasizes that criminal law deals with the legal definition of crime and the societal response, while criminology incorporates broader knowledge about crime, including its social, psychological, economic, and political dimensions. For example, the law may define theft as the unlawful taking of property, but criminology studies why theft occurs: poverty, inequality, opportunity, peer influence, or weak enforcement. Criminal law focuses on what the offense is. Criminology focuses on why it occurs and how it can be prevented. Criminal law punishes. Criminology explains, predicts, and reforms. For instance, Pakistan's penal code defines offenses like murder, robbery, and corruption. Criminology examines why murder spikes in conflict-prone areas, why street crime increases during unemployment surges, and why corruption persists despite strict laws. Criminology also critiques the limits of the law. Critical theorists like Chambliss and Quinney argue that laws are influenced by power structures. They reflect the interests of elites more than the needs of the public. This explains why white-collar crimes often receive lenient treatment compared to petty street crimes. In CSS exam answers, highlight that both fields complement each other. Criminal law creates order. Criminology provides insight to improve laws, policing, justice systems, and rehabilitation. A holistic understanding of crime requires both disciplines working together. Crime is not simply the result of individual wrongdoing. Modern criminology asserts that crime is deeply rooted in the structure of society. This means crime is a social problem rather than just a personal failure. Sociologists emphasize that criminals do not emerge in isolation. Social conditions create the environment in which crime becomes more likely. A famous sociological maxim states, "Society prepares the crime, the criminal commits it," highlighting that societal forces such as poverty, inequality, discrimination, and conflict generate the pressures that lead to crime. Crime is considered a social harm because it affects community life, weakens social cohesion, damages economic growth, and increases fear. Scholars argue that crime reflects underlying societal tensions. Henry Thomas Buckle suggested that crime is a symptom of the various ills of society, indicating that societal breakdowns, like dysfunctional families, urban slums, weak educational institutions, unemployment, and political instability, fuel criminal activity. In Pakistan, this perspective is visible in several contexts. Gang violence in Karachi emerges from socio-economic inequality, territorial conflict, and historical neglect of urban planning. Sectarian violence arises from ideological polarization, political manipulation, and institutional failure. Street crime spikes when inflation rises or when youth unemployment increases. Even property crimes often reflect frustration, inequality, and lack of opportunity. Sociological theories reinforce this link. Merton's strain theory explains that when people are unable to achieve socially approved goals through legitimate means, they resort to illegal methods. Shaw and McKay's social disorganization theory links crime with neighborhood breakdown, weak institutions, and community instability. Differential association theory suggests that crime spreads through social interactions, especially when youth associate with deviant peers. Therefore, viewing crime as a social problem shifts the focus from punishment to prevention, requiring reforms in education, employment, governance, and community development. For CSS answers, this approach shows analytical depth and policy relevance. Criminology distinguishes between several key concepts that are often confused with one another: deviance, sin, vice, and evil. Understanding these distinctions is essential because exam questions commonly require clear conceptual explanations supported by sociological and criminological insight. Deviance refers to any behavior that violates social norms, customs, or expectations, but is not necessarily illegal. Deviant acts depend on cultural values. What is deviant in one society may be normal in another. For example, dressing unconventionally, rejecting arranged marriage, or challenging traditional authority may be deviant but not criminal. Becker's labeling theory argues that deviance is socially constructed. Behavior becomes deviant only when society labels it as such. Sin is a religious or moral concept associated with actions that violate divine commandments or spiritual principles. Not all sins are crimes. For instance, lying or certain moral transgressions may be sinful but not illegal. In Islamic societies, sin and law overlap more closely, but they are still distinct categories. Vice refers to socially undesirable behaviors such as gambling, prostitution, drug use, and alcohol consumption. Vices may or may not be crimes depending on the legal system and cultural context. For example, alcohol is legal in many countries but strictly prohibited in Pakistan for Muslims under state law. Evil is a philosophical and moral category describing intentional harm, cruelty, or extreme moral wrongdoing. Evil acts like terrorism, torture, and mass violence go beyond crime. They represent moral corruption and deep social pathology. Criminology uses these concepts to clarify that crime is a legal category, while deviance, sin, and vice are social, moral, or cultural categories. This helps explain why certain harmful acts of elites, e.g., corruption, face weak moral condemnation in some societies, while less harmful acts may be harshly judged. Cascading style sheets answers that differentiate these terms show conceptual maturity and theoretical understanding. Criminology teaches that crime is not an absolute concept. It is defined by the norms and values of a society. Norms are the unwritten rules of behavior, while values represent the deeper beliefs and principles that a society holds. Together, these shape what a community considers acceptable or unacceptable, legal or illegal. Different societies define crime according to their dominant cultural, moral, and political values. For example, in Pakistan, norms derived from religion and tradition influence the criminalization of alcohol consumption, blasphemy, zina, and certain family-related offenses. In contrast, many Western societies may not criminalize these behaviors because their values emphasize individual freedom and secularism. A key insight from sociology states that behavior defined as crime in one society may occur in another society without being considered punishable. Durkheim argued that deviance serves a vital social function. It clarifies moral boundaries and can even lead to social change. When norms evolve, laws change. For example, some behaviors once considered crimes, like certain forms of protest or mental health-related actions, are no longer punished due to modernization. Similarly, Pakistan's reforms in juvenile justice and mental health law reflect changing societal values that prioritize rehabilitation and welfare over punishment. Theorists like Howard Becker emphasize that crime is a social construction. Powerful groups influence which behaviors become criminal. This helps explain why white-collar crimes sometimes receive weaker enforcement than street crimes, and why moral crimes are often highly politicized. Understanding norms and values enables criminologists to interpret legal change, cultural conflict, and social reaction. For CSS aspirants, explaining the dynamic relationship between norms, values, and criminalization shows analytical command over core criminological concepts and demonstrates the ability to contextualize crime within Pakistan's cultural landscape. Physical security refers to the systems, structures, and strategies used to protect people, property, and infrastructure from crime and harm. Criminology contributes directly to physical security by offering theories, data, and prevention models that guide how urban spaces, public institutions, and communities can be made safer. One of the most influential frameworks is crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED, which emphasizes using architectural and environmental design to reduce opportunities for crime. CPTED principles include natural surveillance, good lighting, clear sightlines, natural access control, controlled entry, exit points, territorial reinforcement, boundaries and markers that signal ownership, and proper maintenance. Research shows that environments designed with these principles reduce fear and crime by limiting opportunities and increasing the likelihood of detection. In Pakistan, CPTED is visible in major safe city projects in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi. Islamabad's project includes more than 3,000 high-tech cameras placed strategically at crime hotspots, entry and exit points, traffic choke locations, and critical installations. These cameras allow real-time monitoring, rapid police response, and evidence collection. Criminological data helps identify hotspots where crime is most likely to occur, enabling targeted physical security measures. Beyond urban centers, criminology assists in designing safer neighborhoods, schools, transport systems, commercial zones, and government buildings. For example, avoiding isolated alleys, adding pedestrian lighting, placing police kiosks in vulnerable areas, securing parking lots, and improving public transport surveillance all stem from criminological insight. Physical security is not only about catching criminals, it is about reducing opportunities for crime to occur. For CSS Answers, linking security infrastructure to criminological principles, especially CPTED, demonstrates evidence-based understanding and awareness of Pakistan's contemporary security reforms. Social security, in criminological terms, refers to the stability, welfare, and cohesion of a society that indirectly prevent crime by strengthening social well-being. Unlike physical security, which focuses on barriers, surveillance, and space management, social security addresses the underlying social conditions that fuel criminal behavior. Criminologists recognize that unemployment, poverty, poor education, marginalization, and social exclusion are strong predictors of crime. Therefore, improving social security through welfare systems, job programs, public education, and community development reduces the pressure that drives individuals toward crime. This perspective aligns with Merton's strain theory, which explains crime as a response to blocked opportunities. Programs that promote social integration play a significant preventive role. For example, community policing, a model where police collaborate with local residents, schools, and community groups, builds trust and reduces fear. In Pakistan, initiatives such as Punjab's Tahafuz centers provide counseling, skills training, and rehabilitation to at-risk youth, reflecting criminological insight that early intervention reduces long-term criminality. Criminology also highlights the importance of social capital, the trust, cooperation, and networks within a community. Strong social bonds deter crime by increasing informal social control. Hershey's social bond theory explains that attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief in societal values reduce criminal tendencies. Another social security challenge is corruption, which weakens trust, undermines institutions, and creates an environment where lawbreaking becomes normalized. Combating corruption requires transparency, governance reforms, civic education, and institutional accountability, all of which are grounded in criminological understanding of social behavior. Thus, criminology promotes a holistic approach. Crime prevention is not only a law enforcement duty, it is a social development project. For CSS aspirants, linking crime reduction to welfare, inclusion, and governance shows an advanced understanding of criminology's role in public policy. Criminology is also essential for understanding and strengthening economic security. Crime has deep economic dimensions. It both arises from economic hardship and threatens national prosperity. Criminologists study this relationship by analyzing how unemployment, inflation, inequality, and poverty fuel ordinary crimes such as theft, robbery, violence, and drug trafficking. At the same time, criminology investigates economic and financial crimes, white-collar crimes such as fraud, embezzlement, corporate corruption, tax evasion, insider trading, and money laundering. The FBI warns that white-collar crimes are not victimless. They destroy companies, wipe out savings, destabilize markets, and erode public trust in institutions. In Pakistan, corruption and financial fraud drain national resources, deter investment, and weaken governance. Economic security is also threatened by organized crime networks engaged in narcotics, smuggling, counterfeit goods, illegal land grabbing, and human trafficking. Criminology analyzes how weak regulation, institutional loopholes, political influence, and informal economies provide opportunities for such crimes to flourish. Criminologists help policymakers understand why financial crimes succeed, failures in regulation, auditing gaps, loopholes in banking laws, weak corporate oversight, and lack of digital monitoring. They also provide insights into anti-corruption strategies, asset recovery systems, financial intelligence, and transparency reforms. For CSS Answers, it is important to emphasize that economic stability reduces crime, and crime reduction improves economic stability. Development projects, employment programs, microfinance initiatives, and urban regeneration can reduce criminal opportunities by improving livelihoods. On the other hand, strengthening anti-corruption bodies, implementing modern financial tracking, and enforcing corporate accountability protect the economy from criminal exploitation. Criminology therefore plays a dual role. It explains how economic conditions drive crime and how crime threatens economic development. This connection is crucial for governance and state policy. In conclusion, we tie together the themes discussed throughout the lecture to show how crime, society, law, and security are interconnected. Criminology bridges multiple disciplines: law, sociology, psychology, economics, anthropology, and political science, to provide a comprehensive understanding of criminal behavior. Crime cannot be understood through legal definitions alone. It must be analyzed within the social, cultural, and institutional environments that shape it. We began by defining criminology from legal, sociological, and psychological perspectives. We then explored its wide scope, including lawmaking, criminal typologies, victimology, justice systems, and crime prevention models. We clarified how criminology differs from criminal law, emphasizing that criminology explains behavior while the law regulates it. We examined crime as a social problem, learned to distinguish crime from deviance, sin, vice, and evil, and explored how norms and values shape what societies define as criminal. We also connected criminology with physical security through evidence-based strategies like CPTED and safe city surveillance, and with social security by highlighting welfare, inclusion, and social development as crime prevention tools. Finally, we explored how criminology relates to economic security by addressing both the causes of crime and the threats posed by financial and organized crimes. These themes show that crime is shaped by society, and society is shaped by crime. For CSS aspirants, understanding these interconnections is essential for producing analytical, theory-backed, policy-oriented answers. Using examples from Pakistan, such as urban crime patterns, corruption, terrorism, youth unemployment, and safe city projects, demonstrates practical insight and command over real-world issues. As Durkheim noted, crime is normal because it reveals where societies must evolve. Criminology helps us interpret these signals and design reforms that promote justice, security, and development. Thank you for watching this lecture. If you found this lecture helpful, make sure to subscribe to Crash CSS, press the bell icon so you never miss any upcoming lectures, and stay connected with us for serious, structured preparation. I will see you in the next lecture.